Good afternoon, Ignition Radio listeners, and welcome to Airtime of the Geek. I know it's normally on a Monday afternoon. Today we're doing it on a Wednesday. It's just gone after 1 p.m. if you're listening via our website or via TuneIn. If you're listening to the repeat, it's 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central and 8 p.m. Eastern. If you're catching up on YouTube, then please like and subscribe to this video and our channel. Comments, queries, suggestions, you can follow me on Twitter at Airtime Geek, or you can follow me on Instagram at Airtime of the Geek. You can email me, paulab@ignitionradio.co.uk, or you can call in the studio. The number's 01642 645 827. You can also take a look at geeky artwork I upload to DeviantArt. My username there is Airtime Geek. It's the 27th of April. Game of Thrones Season 6 aired Sunday night, and we're going to recap it later in the show. For now, let's do the geek news. This week, 2016 continued its murder spree of lovable celebrities. We lost Doris Roberts, probably best known for playing the mother on Everyone Loves Raymond, the beloved comedian Victoria Wood, championship female wrestler Chyna, also known as Joanie Laurer, and of course pop singer Prince. Pearl Mackie has been confirmed as the new companion on Doctor Who. The character is going to be called Bill, and from the preview clip, she looked like she was from the 80s. We'll have to wait and see to find out. Robert Downey Jr. is going to be in the next Spider-Man movie. I'm already creaming my jeans at the thought of that. As you know, we'll be recapping the first episode of Game of Thrones Season 6 later on. Season 7 has officially been renewed, but it's unlikely there'll be a Season 8. Showrunners have said that it's likely Season 7 will be an extended season running 10 to 15 hours, but the story will be complete at that point. I'd love to say that with such a huge world and a huge fan base, it would be well worth HBO commissioning another show in the same universe or a prequel. However, a HBO executive recently ruled out any spin-offs or prequels with a flat no. It's like they don't like money or something. Marvel's Inhumans movie, originally scheduled for a 2018 release, was pushed back to 2019 and has now been delayed indefinitely. I'll keep you updated on this information as it's released, but it's likely that Marvel have decided to keep Inhumans to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I'm going to be seeing Civil War on Friday. I'll be there with the bestie, who hasn't confirmed his team affiliation to me yet, but I think I'm wearing him down on Team Sexy Times. Next week, I'll let you all know what I thought of the film. So let's move to this week's top 10, and this week we are counting down my top 10 dystopian sci-fis. Not just a dystopian, not just a sci-fi, but both together. Dystopia is an ancient Greek word and it means bad place. The trick to creating a dystopia is to take a socio-political issue and turn it up to 11 in a way that creates a crapsack world. Better yet, do it with several issues, or perhaps all of them. A dystopia is a social commentary, literally in the background as a utopian setting. The better dystopias seem to be about how a multitude of things have gone wrong, and now here we are surviving with as much grace as possible. Some dystopias have its citizens living out dehumanised and often fearful lives, feeling the government's eyes upon them at every waking moment and afraid to step out of line for even a moment lest they be brutalised by the police or worse, taken away by the secret police. Others dystopias have the people as happy as any utopian world, but through government-enforced drug programs, the evils of free will, or happiness in slavery. Some dystopias are empires with a dark secret, where those who find out about the often being the secret is released to elsewhere. Some are bread and circus worlds where a minority of people are brutally repressed. Any number of traits can mark out that minority, such as, say, reading books. And some dystopias are only such for the lawbreakers. One man's utopia can easily be another man's dystopia, and so on. So, as usual, we're going to start with number 10, because it's more fun for me to count down backwards. Number 10 is Escape from New York. In 1988, the crime rate in the United States rises 400%. the once great city of New York becomes one maximum security prison for the entire country. A 50-foot containment wall is erected along the New Jersey shoreline, across the Harlem River and down along the Brooklyn shoreline. It completely surrounds Manhattan Island. All bridges and waterways are mined. The United States Police Force, like an army, is encamped around the island. There are no guards inside the prison, only prisoners and the worlds they have made. The rules are simple. Once you go in, you don't come out. Released in 1981, Escape from New York is a cult classic action film featuring the dream team of director John Carpenter and star Kurt Russell. Set 20 minutes into the future, well, in the super futuristic age of 1997, nearly 20 years ago. The president's plane crashes in New York City, specifically Manhattan, which has become a giant penal colony filled with savage gangs that are led by the Duke of New York, played by the late great Isaac Hayes. The commissioner of the United States Police Force, Bob Hawke, is left without any realistic options for a rescue, so he recruits the most badass criminal he can find to get the president out. Snake Plissken, played by Kurt Russell. When Plissken says he wants nothing to do with the mission, Hawke forces Snake into compliance with an explosive leash. If Snake doesn't get the president out of New York within a certain amount of time, the leash go boom, and Snake go boom with it. The film is a classic of the dystopian future genre, and Snake himself is a classic jerk with a heart of gold anti-hero. Snake's history is mostly just hinted at, but an out-of-print novelisation fills in some of the details. The supporting cast includes a lineup of memorable character actors, including Donald Pleasance, Harry Dean Stanton, Ernest Borgnine, Adrienne Barbeau, and Adrienne Barbeau's cleavage, which frankly deserves its own credit. 15 years later, Russell and Carpenter reunited for a sequel, Escape from LA, which dispensed with much of the film's grittiness to lampoon the Los Angeles and Hollywood culture. It was not met with nearly the same level of acclaim as Escape from New York. Number 9 is Starship Troopers. Starship Troopers is one of my favourite all-time films. It's actually my 5th favourite all-time film, and it's directed by one of my favourite all-time directors, Paul Verhoeven. Starship Troopers was made in 1997, and it is generally considered to be the biggest middle finger the novel will ever receive, and that's no accident. A co-production between TriStar Pictures and Touchstone Pictures, yes, Disney helped produce this movie. It's a satire of militarism, the Cold War, dehumanization of the enemy, war movies, propaganda, and military sci-fi in general. It originally started out as an unrelated script called Bug Hunt before the studio acquired the rights to the novel, and Verhoeven, disgusted by what little he was able to stomach of the book, had the script rewritten to deepen the satire. The film was originally designed as the polar opposite of the book in terms of message, characterization and themes, an attack on the idea that war is glorious. It should be noted that some people missed the satire completely, perceiving it as simply a gung-ho action flick. Starship Troopers is a military science fiction novel written by Robert A. Heinlein as an argument against unilateral US ban on nuclear testing, and it was published in 1959. It waxes unvolicious on the merits of soldiers being willing to give their lives for their country and the proper merits of a soldier, an officer and an army and a nation as whole. Heinlein was a former naval officer who had received a health-related discharge before he could gain any actual combat experience. So he interviewed infantry soldiers and officers to get the flavour of ground combat for his book. The story traces the evolution of Juan Johnny Rico from a feckless civilian into an officer and a gentleman during the Bug War as a framing device. Paul Verhoeven grew up in the Netherlands under German occupation, and when he tried to read the novel and found what little he could stomach it very disgusting in a very familiar way. So he made the film specifically parodying the novel, the Why We Fight, World War II propaganda films, and the warmongering and fascism in general, deconstructing the entire premise. The inhuman enemy that is othered are literally inhuman monsters, even more so than in the novel. The militaristic society makes the humans so complacent in their superiority that they even refuse to consider that the enemy might be intelligent after the bugs attack them with a colony drop across from the galaxy. They try to use horrendous military tactics and their forces are completely slaughtered. The attrition warfare gets so bad that the humans are reduced to using child soldiers by the end. The humans only seem like the heroes because of the propaganda-like tone of the film itself. They accomplish, in retrospect, a very small victory and are still clearly having problems with the bugs by the end, but the viewer is encouraged to join the mobile infantry because every soldier is needed. Humans are absolutely too dumb to live. The overwhelming majority of human characters underestimate the bugs as mindless animals in the face of overwhelming evidence to the contrary. For example, early on in the film, the city of Buenos Aires is annihilated by an asteroid, knocked from the asteroid belt into Earth by bug plasma from Klendathu, thousands of light years away. Something like this is far beyond any human can do without trillions of dollars worth of supercomputers, and the bugs are doing these calculations in their heads. The humans insist that the bugs just managed a lucky hit. Bug plasma is light and random, and retaliate with an invasion of Klendathu that ends in an abysmal failure with thousands of humans dead and wounded, all due to massive tactical blunders on the humans' part. Even after all this, the majority of humans are adamant that the bugs are just unthinking beasts that can be easily crushed by human superiority. To quote one expert, "I find the idea of an intelligent bug offensive." With the humans constantly underestimating the bugs, paying for it dearly, and never once learning their lesson, one has to wonder if the bugs find the idea of intelligent monkeys offensive as well. The movie spawned 2 sequels and a cartoon series. The first sequel, Starship Troopers 2, is appalling. Number 3, though, is kind of brilliant in a super cheesy way, and I may cover it at some point. But it's highly entertaining. If you're a big fan of Starship Troopers and you haven't seen Starship Troopers 3, check it out. It's really entertaining. Number 8 on our countdown is the film Equilibrium. Equilibrium features a future where human emotion has been outlawed in an effort to stop another disastrous war from coming to pass. Emotion is kept in check by a drug called prosium. Anything inducive of emotion is destroyed. Books, movies, music, art, and cute little puppy dogs. Sense offenders are people who refuse to take the drug and are terminated with extreme prejudice by sweepers and the grammatron clerics. Equilibrium either rips off or brilliantly homages every great work of dystopian fiction, particularly 1984, The Giver, Brave New World and The Matrix, that appears to have inspired it. Although the film lacks in originality, it's fun for being totally shiny. After a Third World War devastates the Earth, the totalitarian state left in its wake, Liberia, comes to consider human emotion as the root of all conflict. Liberia subsequently bans all emotionally stimulating material, books, music, art, etc., and any sense offenders caught by the police end up sentenced to death by incineration. The government also requires citizens take daily injections of an emotion-suppressing drug in order to prevent sense offenders. The governing body, the Tetragrammaton Council, uses the police to maintain conformity. The high-ranking Grammaton clinics, trained in martial arts of gun kata, frequently carry out raids where they destroy both the sense offenders and any offensive material found with them. Christian Bale plays the role of John Preston, a highly regarded cleric who accidentally fails to take his drug. He ends up feeling emotions, which attracts the attention of the clerics and the council's leader, the all-powerful Father. Okay, so the Equilibrium soundtrack is terrible, but the film's really entertaining, and it's one of those sort of popcorn movies you can't just sit and watch, but I find it really fun. Number 7 is The Matrix. And statistically speaking, I'm guessing there's absolutely zero I could tell anyone about The Matrix, as it's most likely to be the movie on this list everyone has seen. The first film of the trilogy begins in what looks like present day. The film's protagonist, Thomas Anderson, aka Neo, finds out that this world exists as an illusion created by sentient machines that turned against their masters and took over the world. The machines plugged into humanity into a virtual world, the Matrix, in order to keep us complacent, while machines sap bioenergy to refuel themselves. Note: the Wachowskis intended for the machine to use humanity as a giant neural computer network, but executive meddling intervened. Neo eventually finds himself face to face with Morpheus, who teaches Neo the truth. Neo reluctantly joins the resistance movement against the machines, which happens to be both in the real world and in the Matrix. Free minds know that the Matrix resembles reality only, so they no longer have to follow certain inconvenient rules, such as gravity whilst jacked in. They do have one rule they cannot escape, though. Death in the Matrix means brain death in the real world. The Matrix has its own defense force, both inside the system, programs known as agents that can bend the rules of the Matrix, and outside it, hunting machines known as Sentinels. Neo eventually finds his place as a foretold hero and sets out to free mankind from the Matrix. In the process of self-discovery, Neo defeats one of the agents, Agent Smith, and sends the others running in terror. The sequel suck. Number 6 on our continued countdown is Repo the Genetic Opera. I've spoken about Repo before in my top 10 villain songs list, and honestly I'll never pass up an excuse to talk about Repo. The world of Repo the Genetic Opera is ruled by a corporation that has murder sanctioned by law, whose rise to power on a pile of harvested organs. It's exactly icky as it sounds. The film is based on a play of the same name. It's gory, dystopian, and ultimately very moving. It's a black comedy and it never takes itself too seriously. With its lush soundtrack, the film has become a modern cult classic. It's also an actual opera, as nearly every line of dialogue is sung, and it's one continuous musical number. Set in the not-too-distant future, an epidemic of organ failures devastates the planet. Panic erupts and scientists feverishly make plans for massive organ harvests. Out of the tragedy, GeneCo, a multi-billion-dollar biotech company, emerges. GeneCo provides organ transplantation for profit. In addition to financing options, GeneCo reserve the right to implement default remedies, including repossession for those who can't keep up with their organ payments. Collection is the responsibility of the organ repo men, skilled assassins who contracted by GeneCo in order to recover GeneCo's property by any means necessary. And if that sounds suspiciously similar to the movie Repo Men, it is because the movie Repo Men completely ripped off the plot for Repo the Genetic Opera and was sued for it. At the heart of the story is Shiloh Wallace, a 17-year-old girl with a rare blood disease. Shiloh has been kept locked up and protected in her house while she's guarded from the outside by her father, Nathan. Nathan struggles to keep his secret job as a repo man, and more specifically, his next target, a singer called Blind Mag, who was friends with Shiloh's now deceased mother and is also Shiloh's godmother. Nathan works for GeneCo and the Largo family who run it. The Largo family consists of President Roti, his daughter Amber Sweet, and his two sons Luigi and Pavi. Roti is dying and the three siblings bicker and fight about who is to take the role as the head of GeneCo, but disappointed with his own children, Roti takes an interest in Shiloh. Anthony Stewart Head plays Nathan Wallace, father to Shiloh and the Repo Man. The incomparable Sarah Brightman plays Blind Mag. Paris Hilton plays Amber Sweet. Paris was not originally considered for the role and was almost laughed out when she tried to audition, but she forced her way back in and auditioned anyway. She got the part when the creators realised how awesome she was at it. You see, at first they didn't like the idea of Paris Hilton coming onto the project, as her reputation preceded her as a spoiled heiress wannabe singer who caused damage to her face with plastic surgery. Then they realised she'd be playing a spoiled heiress wannabe singer who caused damage to her face with plastic surgery, and then they figured she was pretty perfect for the part. Comments, queries, suggestions, you can follow me on Twitter at Airtime Geek or Instagram at Airtime of the Geek. You can email me, it's paulab@ignitionradio.co.uk, or you can call in the studio. The number's 01642 645 827. You can also take a look at geeky art I upload to DeviantArt. My username there is Airtime Geek. Continuing on our countdown of the top 10 dystopian sci-fis is RoboCop. RoboCop is a classic satirical science fiction action movie from 1987, directed again by one of my favourite all-time directors, Paul Verhoeven. It has since spawned a modern franchise of other RoboCop productions. In the near future, Detroit is overrun by crime, primarily because of the work of unofficial crime boss Clarence Boddicker, played by Kurtwood Smith. To address this matter, Omni Consumer Products decide they will tear down the crime-plagued old Detroit and rebuild it as their own Delta City. Beforehand, they must eradicate crime in the city, and to that end, executive Bob Morton proposes a new conceptual cyborg to the CEO known as the Old Man, which he calls RoboCop, which is constructed from a police officer's body and given superior firepower and combat abilities. This is at the cost of OCP President Dick Jones, who has proposed a military robot called Ed 209 for urban pacification, but which is prone to malfunction. Morton's RoboCop team gets their chance when rookie police officer Alec Murphy, played by Peter Weller, and his partner Annie Lewis chase Boddicker's gang into an abandoned steel mill. Clarence Boddicker and his men overwhelm Murphy and take delight in unloading their shotguns into him. OCP take his remains and effectively resurrect him as the nigh invulnerable cyborg police officer RoboCop. His mind is supposedly erased, but signs indicate that the wipe job wasn't perfect, and he begins to remember bits and pieces of his past. When Murphy starts looking for revenge against the people who took his human life from him, he discovers that Jones is connected to Boddicker and that Jones has meddled with Murphy's programming to ensure his own survival. The script establishes that the film takes place in 2043, because in earlier versions, the news story that was shown following RoboCop's escape from the police and Ed 209 had Casey Wong report to us that Sylvester Stallone had died at the age of 97 during a brain transplant. Verhoeven was forced to tone down the violence in some spots to avoid an X rating in the United States. Most notably, the over-the-top death of Mr. Kinney by the malfunctioning Ed 209 was trimmed to the point that it ironically became far more disturbing than the original cut. And Murphy's death was also toned down. With what remained in the film, I dread to think what the original version was like. RoboCop had 2 sequels which sucked. RoboCop 2 and RoboCop 3. And for some reason, despite being an extremely violent film, it also spawned an animated series and a live-action TV series with a series of made-for-TV movies, followed by like a mini-series and a feature-length animated movie. There was a reboot in 2014, which wasn't really satirical and it wasn't really ultra-violent. It was just kind of meh. I watched it, it wasn't terrible, but it wasn't good either. So number 4 on my list is the film that's probably one of the least 2 known movies on this list actually, and the film is called Moon. It's directed by Duncan Jones, David Bowie's son, who also directed the movie Source Code and the upcoming Warcraft movie, which I'm creaming my jeans to see. The movie stars Sam Rockwell, who is literally made of awesome, and he's probably one of my favourite actors. Jones so wanted to work with Rockwell that he wrote the movie specifically for him. Rockwell plays Sam Bell, an employee contracted by the Korean-based company Lunar Industries to extract helium-3 from lunar soil to fuel nuclear fusion reactors on Earth. He's stationed for a 3-year term on the Sarang base with only a robot named Gertie, voiced by Kevin Spacey, for company, and his only contact with Earth being recorded transmissions he occasionally receives from his wife and 3-year-old daughter. 2 weeks before completing his assignment, he begins to hallucinate, causing him to crash a lunar rover into one of the 3 helium-3 harvesters, and then it gets worse. The thing is, though, that's all I can really tell you about the plot without giving away major spoilers and ruining it completely. So, just don't look up anything about the movie. It's called Moon. It's got Sam Rockwell in it. It's directed by Duncan Jones. That's all you need to know. Download it on iTunes or get it on Amazon. I don't care how you get it. Just watch the movie. It's epic. Number 3 on my list is probably the other least known film, and it's Sunshine. And Sunshine is made by one of my other all-time favourite directors, Danny Boyle. It stars the painfully beautiful Cillian Murphy, the incomparable Michelle Yeoh, who I utterly adore, and sexy as fudge actor Chris Evans. The American Captain America Chris Evans, not the ginger big breakfast Chris Evans. Our sun is dying, mankind faces extinction. 7 years ago, the Icarus project sent a mission to restart the sun, but that mission was lost before it reached the star. 16 months ago, a crew of 8 left the Earth frozen in a solar winter. The payload, a stellar bomb with a mass equivalent to Manhattan. Their purpose, to create a star within a star. 8 astronauts strapped to the back of the bomb. Welcome to Icarus 2. Often overlooked due to its somewhat difficult to swallow premise, which sounds like The Core, but in the sun. The film is actually a really slow, melancholic character study, somewhat philosophical in tone. It's beautiful as an example of science fiction as originally defined, the human spirit meeting the challenges of nature by embracing technology and reason. The major themes in the film are science versus fundamentalism, isolation versus community, and the human response to imminent extinction. Danny Boyle intended to leave out things like visible stars, slow motion gravity, sound in space, but he ended up leaving them in because the movie didn't feel right otherwise. The science advisor was Professor Brian Cox, PhD, OBE, DReam. He said that he would tell them how the thing would happen and where they were going wrong, and it was up to Danny Boyle et al. To decide on it. If the story was better, they bent the real science, and that's what they did. He considered that the right way to do it. On the DVD commentary, Professor Brian Cox, the walking, talking Stephen Hawking, bets the viewer £10 that CERN will not discover the cue ball particle that disables the sun in the film's plot. He invites an email to claim the bet. The claim is due in 2017. In the same commentary, though, Professor Cox said scientists don't gamble. Number 2 on our list is Mad Max Fury Road. I hate the Mad Max movies, and I literally only watched Fury Road because I was running low on bad movies for my yearly top 10 best and worst movies of the year list. Sadly, it turned out to be utterly fantastic, and it was actually my number 1 movie of the year. Mad Max Fury Road is the 4th in the Mad Max film series, and it was released in 2015 after spending 30 years in development hell. Story takes place sometime after that of the original Mad Max. Series creator George Miller returned to the driver's seat of his creation, serving as producer, director and writer once more. Tom Hardy takes over the role of Max, a drifter who's doing his best to survive in a post-apocalyptic wasteland and deal with his personal demons. When he's captured by men who serve the tyrannical warlord Immortan Joe, the dictator keeps him alive as a blood bag for his fledgling war boys. Sometime after Max's capture, Imperator Furiosa, Charlize Theron, one of Joe's trusted road warriors, betrays her master by freeing 5 of his captive wives and going on the run. Max ends up caught in the chase. He and Furiosa work together to escape Joe and his convoy of war boys and others who would all see them dead or worse. And though it's called Mad Max, it's Furiosa's movie. You can kind of tell he's there in name only so that they can make a really awesome movie about a really kick-ass lady. And hopefully when they make the sequel, there'll be less Max and more Furiosa. It's not that the film's about shifting to a female character or anything to do with that. It's just she's such a much more interesting character. She really is, and a lot of the other secondary characters are really cool as well. So number 1 on my list of the top 10 dystopian sci-fis is Logan's Run. Sometime in the 23rd century, the survivors of war, overpopulation and pollution are living together in a great domed city, sealed away from the forgotten world outside. Here, in an ecologically balanced world, mankind lives only for pleasure, freed by servo mechanisms which provide everything. There is just one catch. Life must end at 30 unless reborn in the fiery ritual of carousel. a 1976 science fiction film directed by Michael Anderson and based on the novel of the same name by William F. Nolan and George Clayton Johnson, depicting a future where everyone is young and healthy and no one needs to work, and people look forward to the chance of renewal, possibly some sort of rebirth or reincarnation in the carousel at the age of 30, a privilege given to those who obey the rules faithfully. However, there is a dark side to this apparent utopia. No one has ever survived carousel. Resource management and the population control are simply maintained by mandating the death of everyone who reaches 30. Logan 5, played by Michael York, is a 26-year-old Sandman whose job it is to hunt down and kill runners, those who reach 30 but don't report for carousel. When he learns that the runners are each trying to reach a place called Sanctuary outside the doomed city, he is assigned to find the place and destroy it. In order to do this, he will masquerade as a runner. His life clock is adjusted accordingly, with no assurance that he'll get his 4 years back. And he finds himself pursued by fellow Sandmen as he searches for the truth behind Sanctuary. The movie was very successful, and it's also mentioned in the same breath as other classic dystopian late 60s pre-wars Star Wars science films like Planet of the Apes, Silent Green, Silent Running, and though it bears very little resemblance to its source material, it was greatly enjoyed by fans. Short-lived TV adaptation followed a year later. Multiple attempts to remake the film and adapt it more closely to the original novel from notable directors like Bryan Singer of X-Men, Nicholas Winding Refn of Drive have all been unsuccessful. Recently, Warner Brothers hired BioShock lead designer Ken Levine to write the script for yet another try to remake. The problem is there's just nothing wrong with the original. In the film, the life clocks count to 30, while in the novel, the life clocks expire at 21. Considering the need for MGM in 1976 to adapt a very dystopian and sexually themed film revolving around characters barely of legal age into a sort of PG-rated sci-fi thriller, obviously this was a necessity for a change. So that was my top 10. If you're catching up on YouTube, then please like and subscribe to this video and our channel. You can send comments, queries, suggestions if you follow me on Twitter to @AirtimeGeek or Instagram @AirtimeOfTheGeek. You can email me, it's paulab@ignitionradio.co.uk, or you can call in the studio. The number's 01642 645 827. You can also take a look at geeky art I upload to DeviantArt. My username there is Airtime Geek. So, Game of Thrones began airing its 6th season, and it kicked off with episode 1, The Red Woman. Let's recap that. And I hope you all appreciate what time I had to stay up till to write about this. And I'm not as tired as I was on Monday. Obviously, there's spoilers abound. So if you haven't seen the episode yet, don't change the station or the channel, just turn down the sound. I need the ratings. So the first thing we see in the episode is the wall and the sound of Ghost howling as Jon Snow lays bleeding, his skin turning blue. Sir Davos Seaworthy hears the sound and comes out to discover Jon Snow's body. Sir Davos angry. Jon Snow's mates are proper devoted. It takes them about 3 seconds though to figure out who's behind it. As they're about to put a plan together, Melisandre arrives and looks over Jon's body. She says that she saw him in the flames fighting at Winterfell. In the meantime, Ollie the little brat and Thorne the traitor are admitting to their crimes to the rest of the Night Watch, who are super annoyed about it for about 5 seconds, and then they start going, oh, all right, then we'll follow Thorne. Sir Davos points out to Jon's hot-headed friends that they don't need to die to avenge Jon when the wildlings also owe him their lives. Then we pop off to delicious baddie Ramsay Bolton. He's looking over his girlfriend Miranda's body. He actually seems genuinely cut up about it for about, good 7 seconds. Then he tells the maester to feed her body to the dogs. Ramsay goes to talk to his daddy about Stannis' death, but they don't know who killed him. Roose also seems aware that they are totally screwed without Sansa or Theon to back up their plans to hold the North, as the Lannisters will surely be annoyed that they have gone back on their deal. Then, oh yay, we go straight to Sansa and Theon and their escape trail. Ramsay's men are looking for them. They have to cross an ice river to evade the hounds and find shelter under a felled tree. Theon hugs Sansa, trying to warm her, but the hounds are still on their trail, so Theon tells her that he'll distract the dog so she can escape and head to Castle Black. Theon's plan doesn't work, and Ramsay's men find Sansa, but then here she comes to save the day. Brienne and Pod come riding in. I actually cheered out loud. Pod manages to kill one of them, but Brienne takes out the rest, and Brienne offers a sword to Sansa once again, and this time she sensibly takes it. Pod helps Sansa along with the vows, and Brienne is super happy that someone has finally accepted her as their knight. Hopefully now Sansa will find out that Arya is actually alive, but it's time for King's Landing. Jaime's ship is coming in from Dawn. Myrcella's body is on board. Cersei is really not happy with her new haircut, but she's really pleased with the idea of seeing her daughter again. She runs out to greet the boat, but oh dear, as soon as she sees the coffin on top, her heart breaks. Inside the castle, Cersei talks about what their dead mother's body would look like now as she mourns her daughter. She tells Jaime about the prophecy of her dead children given to her by Maggie the Frog. Jaime promises her they'll take back whatever was taken from them. Now we get a glimpse of Queen Margaery getting a sermon from one of those terrifying sceptres. The High Sparrow stops the sceptre from beating up Margaery, but won't tell her how Loras is. In Dawn, Prince Doran and Miss Murder Happy, Ilaria Sand, are discussing Oberyn when they get the news of Myrcella's death. As soon as the news is read out, she and one of the Sand Snakes, honestly can't remember which way around they are, don't think it's that important, murder Dr. Bashir, Prince Doran, and his bodyguard. By the old gods and the new. I really hate that woman. Back in King's Landing, Prince Tristan is painting the stones for Myrcella's eyes, then the other two Sand Snakes walk in and stab him through the face. Farewell, Tristan, we hardly knew thee. We now join Varys and Tyrion working the streets of Meereen. The Sons of the Harpy are still about, and generally Dany isn't well liked, so they're just speculating on who could be leading the Sons of the Harpy when they find Dany's entire boat collection has been set on fire. Jorah and Dario number 2 are tracking Drogon and Dany. They discuss their mutual boners for the Queen. Jon is still infected with the greyscale, and they find the spot where the Dothraki took Dany, finding her ring. Finally, we get to Dany and the Dothraki horde. She's looking a bit worse for wear. The Dothraki are discussing Dany's body hair, and once the Khalasar reaches the camp, they take her to meet the Khal, who is Khal Morro, not Khal Jacko, as was for some reason stated before the episode aired. The Khal and his mates discuss whether seeing a woman naked or breaking in a new horse is the best sight to see, and settle it to be one of the top 5. Then, as the Khal attempts to strip her, she reveals she understood all their words and speaks Dothraki to them. She name-drops Khal Drogo, and the Khal tells her he's changed his mind about raping her now, but wants to send her to a place for Khal widows. In Brovos, blind Arya is begging on the streets. Then the obnoxious girl turns up, gives Arya a stick and starts beating her up. Back at Castle Black, all the traitors have their bows aimed at Davos's room while they're keeping Jon's body there. Thorne comes to tell them to surrender, and he'll give him some mutton, a horsey, and let him take the Red Woman if he likes. But Davos is not as stupid, and he knows that they'll kill him, so decides the best plan is to use a bit of that blood magic. Note, he still doesn't know that she burned Princess Shireen to crispy death. Melisandre then gets naked in front of a mirror and takes off her necklace, which glows. And then we see a very, 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 very old and very, 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 very naked woman. And she looks to be about 100 and gets in bed and goes to sleep, which is the end of the episode. Melisandre's actress did say in an interview her character is likely 400 years old. To be honest, she's looking quite good. Fans have had plenty of discussion about this since the episode aired, discussing whether or not the power is in the choker because of a season 4 episode where Melisandre's in the bath without it, or if there's other power surrounding it. Either way, it's going to be exciting finding out more. There was a lot to catch up on, and episode 1 is normally spent chasing around all of the characters and finding whereabouts they are. My highlight of the episode was seeing Sansa rescued by Brienne. Second to the stuff at Castle Black, which is actually kind of interesting now that Jon's dead. Prior to this, I always found the Castle Black stuff really, really dull and boring, but these last couple of seasons it's actually been really good. My low points were seeing Dr. Bashir and his son getting murdered by the super annoying sand snakes, and the stuff with the hired sparrow because it's all a bit dull, and the fact that there was literally about a minute of Arya and that was it. We'll be covering more Game of Thrones next week when hopefully we'll finally get to see Bran, maybe a bit more of Arya, and perhaps one day we might find off if Gendry ever made it to his flea bottom. Well, that's it for Airtime of the Geek. Tune in next week for more top 10s, news and reviews. Comments, queries, suggestions, you can follow me on Twitter at Airtime Geek or Instagram at Airtime of the Geek. You can email me paulab@ignitionradio.co.uk, or you can call the studio. The number's 01642 645 827. Don't forget to check out geeky artwork on my DeviantArt. My username is Airtime Geek.